For the first opening statement, I will introduce Dr. Michael Shermer.
Well, good morning. How we doing? Just check and make sure you're paying attention there. So I am Michael Shermer, the director of the Skeptic Society, the publisher of Skeptic Magazine. I brought you guys copies of that. We investigate claims of the paranormal, pseudoscience, fringe groups, and cults, and claims of all kinds between junk science, voodoo science, bad science, pathological science, non-science, and plain old nonsense. And unless you've been abducted by aliens and on Mars for the last 20 years, you know there's a lot of it out there. Nonsense, that is. Some people call us debunkers, but let's face it, there's a lot of bunk. And somebody's got to do it. In that sense, I guess we're the Ralph Naders of bad ideas, something like that. And this particular subject, for obvious reasons in the last several years, the God question has become probably the most prominent one that we've commonly dealt with. So we've done a number of these debates. Dinesh and I enjoy the process here, so we'll have a good time. This evening, just for a show of hands, just to see where we stand, how many of you believe in God? Okay. So it looks like my time is up, and maybe I'll make that long drive back to Pasadena right now, get an early start, going down 99. Well, I used to be a believer. I was a born-again Christian in 1971, matriculated at Pepperdine University, which is a Church of Christ school. I was an evangelical. I attended there, enjoyed the process. I witnessed for the Lord, what you might call Amway with Bibles. We were selling religion to people door to door, and then later, about 7 years later or so, I lost my religion, became something of a born-again atheist, and went around to those same doors, knocked on them, and said, "I changed my mind," and which is sort of like, I guess, what you get when you cross a Jehovah's Witness with an atheist, which is somebody who knocks on your door for no reason at all. I'm not sure why I'm here. Now, I suppose my position, if you have to put a label on it, I saw a bumper sticker once that said, "Militant Agnostic. I don't know, and you don't either." Of course, then when I was on the Stephen Colbert Report, he asked me in the green room what my position was. I said, "Well, you know, I guess I'm an agnostic." And he says, "An agnostic? That's just an atheist without balls." Whoa. Very Colbert kind of thing to say, so I don't want to be that. Since the testosterone is still working, well, okay. So maybe non-theist. In any case, I don't believe in God. Why not? Well, for several reasons that we'll cover, and then Dinesh and I will debate these points back and forth. First of all, the idea is, how do we know anything? Well, we gather evidence through our senses. We logically deduce conclusions from premises. We use empirical data, stuff that we can test, see, and so forth, and we use reason and logic. The problem with trying to prove God is, first, well, what do you mean by God? I mean, most people in America, so I'll presume that is the case here, mean a supernatural being of unlimited power who created the universe, sustains it, and knows who we are, and created an afterlife for which we will be judged, and so forth. Something along those lines: omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, and omnibenevolent. How would you test that? How would you know if that was true or not? Of course, there's personal revelation. People have a feeling for it, as our moderator said. Some people, I just sense the presence. Okay. But of course, a lot of people believe a lot of things based on how they feel about things that aren't true, or at least that you would not agree with. People of other religious persuasions that you would consider to be cult-like, and they have equally passionate beliefs based on how they feel about it or how they were raised. So it comes down to specific arguments that are made, and since I'm going first, I'll just sort of review some of the biggest arguments. These are all into the category of what we call the God of the gaps argument. That is, if science can't explain this particular mystery, X looks designed, or X looks miraculous, or I just can't see how it could have come about through some natural means. That's evidence, therefore, that a deity did it. The problem with that is that those kinds of arguments change as the generations go by. In Newton's time, Newton wrote his great work, Principia Mathematica, and at the end of it, even though he described most of the forces of nature as natural, he could not explain the problem of the plane. That is, all the planets are in the plane of the ecliptic. They're all in sort of a flat disk, all going around the same direction, all in this same plane. They're not willy-nilly like this. They're in a plane, except for Pluto, which is no longer a planet, so no problem. Poor Pluto. So Newton invoked the deity. He used what would be the equivalent of an intelligent design argument, that the most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. Nobody makes that argument anymore. Oh, the planets, how did they get there? That must be evidence for God's handiwork in the universe. Nobody makes that argument because science has replaced that argument with a natural explanation. We have a perfectly good explanation for how solar systems are formed out of interstellar gas that condenses. As it begins to condense under its own gravity, it begins to spin. As it begins to spin, it begins to flatten into a disk where there are little asymmetries that form planets and stars and so forth. So just extrapolate that out, that any argument that has ever been made or will be made could conceivably be explained someday by science. What will you do with your faith if, at that point, that argument you based it on then gets explained? Do you give up your faith, or do you just shift to new arguments? And therefore, you're left in the position of always chasing the gaps that science has yet to fill. And my biggest beef with intelligent design creationists is that they just keep bringing up new gaps and as if that's the answer, when in fact in science that isn't the answer. It's just the beginning of the exploration, whereas for creationists that's the end of the story.